Welcome to FailCraft, the podcast where we dive into the messy, real side of success and explore how setbacks become the stepping stones to growth and clarity. Today's guest brings a perspective that is both global and deeply personal. Clifford Brown is a former director of USAID with a 27-year career that took him from the comforts of a Beverly Hills law partnership to the front lines of civil chaos in places like Haiti, Kyrgyzstan, and Guinea. He has witnessed societies fall apart firsthand and spent decades navigating the complex, often frustrating machinery of foreign aid. Is here to talk about a massive recent institutional setback, the sudden termination of USAID in 2025, and what the collapse of such a long-standing mission teaches us about the fragility of trust, both abroad and at home. So, Clifford, thank you for being here today. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Well, likewise, thank you for having me. And just a shout out to all of your fans in Africa. It's
All right.
a great continent with a great future. I'm very fond of it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate. So let's dive in, Clifford. Your career is defined by service in unstable regions, but your profile highlights a profound recent event, the sudden termination of USAID in 2025. So you call that a tragedy that will impact the world for years. So take us to the moment you realized this chapter was, truly closing. So what was the, of the agency you dedicated 27 years to feel like personally for you?
Well, well, thank you for this opportunity. I was outraged in February of 2025 when our newly inaugurated President Trump and his appointed Elon Musk decided to abolish USAID. USAID was the primary American foreign aid agency that had been created by John Kennedy in the 60s. And it had served throughout the world to deliver a host of different kinds of assistance to countries. There was always a mutual agreement before a USAID mission would be accepted by a country. The country would agree to receive a mission. They called it technical cooperation, and some Americans were sent over to set up an office. In every mission I worked in, they were far outnumbered by the local employees. And then the agency would hire implementers or simply give grants to various organizations to engage in a variety of activities that both nations felt would improve economic development, would fight poverty, would combat corruption, could promote democracy, could improve public health, could improve education. The list goes on and on and on. And over the years, it evolved somewhat. More recently, it was focused more on improving governance, teaching legislators how to uh, adopt better laws to improve tax collection, to change some of the practices, say, in hospital financing. It's such a long list, I hesitate to try and elaborate on all of them. I was a lawyer initially. I came out of a firm. I was doing commercial work and I was a partner in a firm. And after one of my big cases ended, I had time on my hands and I saw an advertisement that the agency wanted people who had a second language. And I happened to, at the time, have Spanish, and I still do, but that was the only foreign language I spoke at the time. But I wanted to use it. So I flew back to Washington, D.C. I interviewed with the agency, and there was a big map on the wall. I asked the general counsel, "What are those red pins on the wall?" He said, "That's where our lawyers are." And I said, something in me said, "I got to have it." So I gave up, a fairly successful career as a commercial attorney to do that, and we can get into what happened next. But last February, Musk and Trump said they were terminating USAID because it was a bunch of crooks. I gave up 2/3 of my income to join that agency. Most of the people that I worked with were very altruistic folks who wanted to sincerely help the world develop economically, help other countries. A lot of the people were former Peace Corps volunteers. They were not crooks. not at all. I was so outraged, I decided I got to finish my stories. I had earlier published a book. I called it Dilettante at the time, but it didn't discuss most of my career in USAID. It was basically something I wrote for my kids and grandkids, and it was a collection of my stories to show them how I got into the foreign aid business. And it took me through 1987 when my first overseas posting was in Nairobi, Kenya, and I was a legal advisor there. I was a regional legal advisor. I had to fly all over the continent, working in the missions. Foreign aid law is a very specialized area of U.S. law, and there's very few people that do it, and it's totally useless outside the agency. So that was my first exposure, but the book only got to 1987. Well, in February of this year, I was inspired to finish the story, and I wrote the story in a book that's now out. It's called Inside USAID. I'm not here to sell the book, but if somebody's curious about the rest of the stories, that's where they are. I wanted to at least go on record about what working in USAID was about, what we did. I like to say now that, our job, we were teaching people. When I say we, it was primarily the implementers who did the teaching in the field, but we were giving advice. Most of what we did was not providing material. It was engaging in studies to analyze what could be done better and then working with people to convince them to do it better in whatever it was, whether it was public finance or procurement or hospital management or water supply management, farm. I wanted to finish the stories, and that's what I've done. And I wanted to show people that, we were, our job, I like to say, we were teaching people how to fish. And now, not only did we stop doing that, we threw all the fishing gear in the water. It's a different program. So, the stories are out there for folks to understand that USAID was a well-intended organization. It's been destroyed. There were some failures within USAID for sure. And I consider the destruction of the agency to be a major failure of USAID foreign policy. And in terms of, for the philosophy of your podcast is to show how failure can turn into success. I hope that happens. I hope that we will learn that eventually that was a very useful agency and we need to revive it. But at the moment, I consider it simply, we're only talking about the failure of what I thought was a successful foreign aid policy for many years.
All right. So, Clifford, you left a partnership at Beverly Hills law firm and a dream home over the ocean to enter this world of chaos. So, in the hardest moments of your USAID career, did you ever feel like the decision was a mistake or a failure?
Many times I look back, that's, I think, would have been inevitable. But the truth is that while I emphasize that USAID was filled with highly altruistic people, I wanted to do it because I thought it would be fun. And it was. And twice they sent me to school for extended periods. I learned Russian and French with them. I'd already had Spanish. And to me, that was a life-changing experience when you start to engage with people in another language. It's like you've grown another soul and you start laughing about things that aren't even funny in your own language and whatnot. And plus, it was highly educational to be exposed to different countries and different cultures. And looking back, I don't regret doing it. But at the time, sure, I look back often and wondered what life would have been like had I continued my career as an attorney and was in the Los Angeles area. It would have been very different. But my two children, I have five children, but only two initially went with me to Nairobi, and they are the oldest two, and they graduated from high school in Guatemala. They had a world of experiences that most kids don't have. So I don't regret the move. To answer your question plainly, it was a good career.
All right, all right. So you've mentioned being physically present in countries like Kyrgyzstan and Guinea on at the very first day the social consensus fell apart. So what does that moment of collapse actually look like? Actually look and feel on the ground.
It's very frightening when it happens. I was in Haiti immediately after there was a military coup, and voters had come out to vote in elections, and an army general named Raul Cedras came out, ordered his troops to go out and actually literally shoot voters as they were standing in line to vote. And we immediately terminated all of our assistance to the government that was created by him. He ultimately fled to Panama with his, but at the time, Haiti was a very in very dire straits, and we had to go down there. I remember taking the shuttle down from the lodging was in a city up on a hill outside of Port-au-Prince, and we would drive down toward in armored cars down toward the embassy, and we would see bodies on the side of the road. It was a very scary time. I was in Guatemala the same day that the President Serrano ordered the army to surround the Supreme Court and the Congress. He arrested the judges and held the congressmen hostage for a while, and he was trying to imitate what he called an auto golpe, it's like a self goal in soccer. And at the time in Latin America, that's what people thought Fujimori had done in Peru. So he was trying to do that again in Guatemala. He also failed and fled to Panama. I was in Nicaragua when, right after Daniel Ortega lost an election. It was in that country, it was a very hopeful time because people were so excited that now democracy had arrived. Of course, 30 years later, it's back in Ortega's hands. I was in Kyrgyzstan, and I was the acting DCM, the number two in the embassy, because the guy with the real job had gone on home leave, and so they asked me if I would be the DCM during the Tulip Revolution, when a crowd climbed over the fence that was around their White House, and President Akayev got in a helicopter and flew to Kazakhstan and eventually to Moscow, and the whole place fell apart. That night, groups of young men were raging around the city, burning shops, breaking into shopping malls and whatnot. The police just disappeared. It was total chaos, and we spent the entire evening trying to keep track of our people and fielding phone calls. In Guinea, I was there when Lassana Conte died. He had been their president for close to 30 years, and the military couldn't agree on who was going to take over. So there were gun battles going on in downtown Conakry, and I lost count of the emergency action committee meetings at the embassy there. Many times we just couldn't go to work. We had to stay in our homes. We couldn't go into the embassy. Again, a very frightening situation. I visited the offices of one of our grantees, IFAS, the International Federation for Electoral Systems, and I saw the bullet holes on the walls that came through while the staff was lying on the floor. So it was a very frightening situation. The plain answer is it's very scary when the social consensus falls apart. I hope it doesn't happen here, but it's in the process of happening, right?
Okay, so Clifford, after a life that transitioned from high stakes law to global service, and now witnessing the end of an era for foreign aid, what does being successful mean to you?
I think helping others is the biggest form of success you can achieve. Most religions will tell you that the giver benefits as much as the recipient. And for us to withdraw from the world of foreign assistance, to me, is a failure. Success will be to renew these initiatives. And I think in terms of personal success, you hear it all the time from philosophers and clerics that helping other people is really a great form of success. I mean, there's many other ways to define it. It's not, how much money you've collected. It's not job security. It's your level of happiness. And the thing I think that makes most people individually happy, it's just that simple.
Oh, that's a great response. So, what is the specific failure or trust you see happening that worries you the most?
It's the polarization of our society that, for reasons I really fail to understand, we have tried to turn the clock. We are trying to turn the clock back to an era in which we were not as diverse. We were more prejudiced. We were not reaching out to get really almost metaphysical about it. The first time I saw a national border when I was 13, we traveled to Mexico with my family. And I stood there. I'd never been to a border before. And I stood there looking at this very wealthy farmland on one side and these slums on the other side, and I could not understand that fence. I said, why is that fence here? Oh, that was 64 years ago. I still feel that way. I think national borders themselves are an historical anachronism, and they foster distrust in the sense that they stop people from understanding each other. You don't understand people that you don't work with closely. So at some point, perhaps in the very long run, we will go back to an era where most government is very local. There's really, with the advent of these national distances that are controlled by a single government, it fosters distrust in the sense that people don't understand people on the other side of the border. And there are borders internally as well as internationally.
All right, all right. So, finally, Clifford, for our listeners who want to read your stories, understand the legacy of USAID, and follow your, subtrack. So, where's the best place for them to go?
Well, they can go to cliffordbrown.subtract.com, and there's a series of articles there. And the book can be found at least in the U.S. on Amazon and other major platforms. I'm not the ebook right now. It just came out. They've got a promotion going on for the ebook. It's like $2.99. If somebody wants to buy that, that's fine. But as I say, I did not do this for the income from the book. I did it because I wanted the record straight about what USAID was and what it did. And I'm so sorry for any former USAID employees that are listening to what happened to both their careers and this agency.
All right. Clifford, it was a great time having a conversation with you today, and I'm really excited for you to come and share your thoughts on the podcast today. It was nice talking to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.